Welcome, Eagles fans, to this week's episode of the Inside Swoop, presented by Jim Beam, where we're talking all things West Coast. Will Schofield, we picked a pretty good year to start a show together. It's going good.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Well, if otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about things. So I think this provides a bit of a platform to speak about what's going on at the footy club. I like it.
All right. A few unwanted records bobbed its head on the weekend over the Hawks, which I'm sure fans are pretty privy to at the moment. You've got one of their lowest scores from the past 15 years.
I reckon I would have played in at least one, if not more, of the top four. If that was fifth, I would have played in at least one of the top four.
Of the beltings?
Yeah. Geelong here, it's against Subi. I reckon we lost by 130 one day.
Yep. Did you play in the final one in 2010 where we went down to the Cattery?
Yep, played in that one, so that's two.
And your
of the
mum was in the crowd for that one?
Oh, she would have been front row for that.
Real proud of her boys' performance on that day?
Correct. But it gives me some sense of knowing what these players are going through. I'm not speaking from a point of, up on, ivory towers.
Sure. What about third lowest score in club history? Pretty dry day out there too. I want to say that maybe the top 10 of those results in our history might have been a bit of a wet day. No,
that's not one you want, is it? Was it 6 scoring shots or something like that? 4 goals, 2? Is that what they ended up scoring? 2 points in the second half. Clearly, all of these stats point towards a pretty terrible performance.
Yeah, so let me throw this to you then. Do you view this game any differently to how you viewed the 2023 season? Is it officially rock bottom, as the outside pundits are calling?
Look, I know that I'm on a club platform here, but I've said this across 6PR, Fox Footy, I've done a lot of Channel 9.
You're a very busy man, Will.
Well, everyone wants to hear my opinion. I don't know why. But anyway, I've come out and I've spoken about it a lot, and I keep coming back to the fact, for me, the way I look at it, it's not a lot of emotion involved for me. Yes, I've got great connections with this footy club and know a lot of the players, but I'm not a fan. I haven't been a fan of the West Coast Eagles. I've played here. They've given me a lot of support. But watching the games now, look, they were losing the week before as well. They've lost a couple of games by 100 points before that on the weekend. So I think this team's already going poorly. They don't have any players. No players have come back into the side. In fact, they've probably lost more.
I definitely have.
There's still questions around everything that there's no new questions for mine. So, although it's a big loss against a team that's not going amazingly well in Hawthorn, for me it wasn't a massive step in a worse direction. It's pretty much continued the path.
The 8-0 final term was one of the more disappointing stats for the team, perhaps indicating that effort was certainly falling off the cliff as the game wound down. How was the senior coach's reaction to the players' performance post-match? Well, your very own Will Schofield threw that question to Simo on Monday. Let's have a listen.
Directly after a loss like that in the rooms, do you speak to them afterwards, or do you let them think about it?
It was a young team. It was probably our youngest team I've coached. So that also goes through your mind about, okay, well, you only got so many bullets you can fire in terms of an aggressive response. And I started and I thought, no, it's probably not the right time for this group. They're looking for answers as much as we are, and the dynamic of the group is just different. It's really young.
A good point there from Simo about how many sprays you've got in your holster and that you can give out to not lose its effectiveness. Do you remember any good ones that you might have been on the end of with some of your mates?
Well, I was trying to think of Simo's sprays to the group. He was always more disappointed than angry. Well, that's what I felt. And Woosha wasn't angry either. Woosha was more, you've probably disappointed. You've let me down, but you've let yourself down. But you've definitely let me down, and he never wanted to with either of those guys. So, Simo, I can't remember any specific group sprays. I obviously copped a good yarning to over the phone when a bit of an incident on the Gold Coast I got reported for. Had a chat down the line to me, Simo did.
Weren't Fox Footy covering that pretty tightly as well?
Yeah, beautifully. Yeah, cheers for that. But John Worsfold, I do remember one particular one at the SCG. We'd lost poorly. Can't remember what year it was, but Andrew Embley was playing, and Woosha was going through Coxie and Lynchy and Embers. How many games have you played, mate? And Embers started going, I've played 200. And he goes, well, you should know, because it looks like you're counting your games, with a few expletives in it. And Embers walked straight into it. But when you're one of those players that isn't copying the spray, to give you some insight, like it's a pretty fragile environment after a big loss. Club's going poorly. That's why I asked the question of Simo.
Well, you've been involved where you've had the talk straight after the game, they've let them simmer for a day, and then you've copped whatever that spray was going to be Monday, right?
The simmering is worse.
Right.
You'd rather... Look, the players know exactly how they're going right now. If you look at this club right now, the players aren't coming off the field going, oh, gee, that was a good effort. Like, they know how poorly they're going. So you almost, as a player, if we just speak specifically about them, you want to come off the ground and you want to cop it, because then at least you know where you stand, or at least I did anyway. I don't want to have to go home, fly from Tasmania back to Perth, sleep on it, wait until 11 o'clock meeting the next day to hear how poorly you'd go. You want to get the feedback straight away. So, look, it sounded like Simo was giving that, but yeah, tough predicament that he's in, the club's in, with young players, because sometimes the spray doesn't work, as Simo said.
We are ranked number 1 in the AFL this year for broken tackles, and the club's been down around that end for a fair few years now. Do you remember sort of the ebbs and flows of emphasis on tackling during pre-season campaigns? I reckon throughout your time there's been a mixture between sprinkling it in to having real heavy emphasis on it. How big a thing is it to be training the tackling, and how big is it as the personnel you're carrying?
Yeah, so look, personnel plays a part. Clearly, if you're a younger player trying to tackle a hardened body, it's more difficult. But yeah, I certainly don't try to be too critical of the players, because I've been out there. I know how brutal this game is. I know how hard it is as a player to be consistent and show consistent effort and all of those things. Right? I've played in bad teams. I've done all that. But tackling is more of a mindset than technique and strength, to be really honest. Can you screw your guts up? Can you show some grit? And you got a one-on-one, you got a guy coming towards you. Can you tackle that bloke and not let him get away from you? And yes, it's strength. Yes, it's technique. But my overriding thoughts on it is its mentality. So that is something you can control. The
skipper, Luke Shuey, who would certainly be giving his all to be out there helping his team at the moment, he fronted the firing squad yesterday. Let's listen to what he had to say to the media.
We're hurting, and we've been hurting all year. We're not satisfied with where we're at. When we had a healthy list at the start of the year, we were stringing really good quarters of footy together, so we know that we need to get our injuries right and get our bodies back on the park. But when we do that, that's when we'll assess where we're at, and if we can't produce results when we have a healthy list, then there's probably issues. But certainly by the bye and post-bye, we should have a healthy list to choose from, and then I'm sure you guys will see some different results from us.
So you've got 2 players out there on the weekend from the 2018 flag. You've just lost TB and JD, just either pillar ends of the ground. But you lost to North in round 1 with a pretty healthy list. They went on to then beat Freo the next week, so we don't know where North were currently at that time. Is the depth really being displayed here from the West Coast Eagles, or would every other club be in this situation if you're taking their top 11 of their first 18 out? Yeah,
well, I guess like to use Luke's comments, you don't really know, do you? It's hypothetical. Well, you know, if there was 10 players playing, maybe they would be better, maybe they wouldn't be. It sounds like the skipper's asking for a tiny bit of patience, which I probably lean towards as well. See if you can get some numbers back towards the back end of the year, see if the game plan holds up, see if the consistent effort can come back, see if that, you know, can change. If it doesn't, then there's some real issues, as Luke just said, really. So, look, I don't know the answer to would they hold up with it, but I will say, just so I'm balanced and not, well, they're missing players and that's why they're playing poorly. I think it's got to be a mixture between that, yes, agree, and having young players out there. There's some guys playing right now that aren't up to AFL standards, so you have to acknowledge that. But that's clearly come about by players not being available. But you can't just say, well, we don't have any players, so we're no good. That doesn't fly. The younger players need to stand up, talk about the tackling, mistackling, ground balls, fumbles, all that stuff. They're all controllables. It doesn't matter if Shannon Hearn and Luke Shuey and Tom Barrass are out there. If you've got a ground ball on the wing and there's no one around you, it doesn't matter who's playing with you. You need to be able to take that ball. So they need to rapidly improve the fundamentals of the game, as well as getting some players back into the team. So what are your thoughts when you see ex-club legends come out in the media and demand immediate sackings from the footy club? That's a good question. I thought you'd like that one. Yeah, I was disappointed. I'm talking about Glenn Jakovic. I'm happy to, that's who we're talking about. I actually walked into 6PR when Jacko was speaking about this issue. Look, I don't know, Jacko's been around a lot longer than me and he's a great operator in the media. I work with him at 6PR and I really enjoy Jacko's insight because, once again, he's been there and done that. He's played in poor sides. He's been a dual premiership player, multiple Australians, best and fairest. He'd arguably be the best, greatest player to play for West Coast Eagles. So we've got nothing but respect for him. But I draw the line when you're talking about people's livelihoods. That's just I can't speak for Jacko.
All right, good call. So the club is 100% committed to this rebuild, and I think they've done well in the last few drafts. But the problem is, Scully, is that the ones that they think they've hit on, which is a few, this is the opportunity that they would ordinarily have to come in and show themselves and to get these critical 20 to 40 to 50 AFL games. The worst part from a supporter is that these names, your Bazzo, Chesses, Hewitts, Jinby's been out there but long, now starting to come back. Barnett, developing ruckman, Burgess, Hoff, Cully, we're not seeing them out there. And this is the time where you don't want to make it a quote-unquote wasted season because you want to see what they can do and you want to start building that base.
Yeah. Look, it's clearly it's a commitment to the rebuild, but to rebuild quickly, you actually need senior players around as well. So the mixture between senior and youth right now is really poor, and it's just full youth. So the young guys you are seeing out there aren't at the level, and they haven't been given the opportunity over the last few years because they haven't been played probably. But if you go back 3 years and you start playing the kids too early, you're probably copping criticism in that front too, because you probably start losing games there as well. So that's the real balance of AFL footy is, can you get the selection right to blood young guys at the same time as winning games of football? But all of this, hindsight's 2020. Like you can look back and go, well, we should have done this and we shouldn't have done that. But in reality, here we are. So I'm definitely not a look back kind of guy because whatever's happened, and hear a lot of commentary and a lot of talk about what West Coast has done as a footy club over the last 3-4 years. To be really honest, it's somewhat irrelevant because what are you going to do about it? That's where I come from. Things I've learned at this footy club, both from John Worsfold, Adam Simpson, Trevor Nisbet, all those guys, very much a look forward footy club. And so these sorts of things, you need to figure out what you're going to do, not what you've done.
All right, well said. The injury curse, and there's no other way to put it, it's exactly what it is. It's continuing. Jermaine Jones, the latest casualty. It's like every week someone is going down, and they're not small injuries by any front. So how gutting is it to lose someone who's been a major bright spot in 2 very down years for the footy club?
Yeah, really disappointing, right? He's arguably been one of the better players this year. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, he was a top. He was the most improved, was he, last year at the John Worsfold medal? So it came from nowhere. And the fact we had to move him out of defence to plug holes forward, his best footy's certainly behind the ball.
Well, we've seen his best footy behind the footy this year, haven't we? And so, look, I've really enjoyed his dash, his run, his carry, all of that. So it's looking like we're going to miss him for a bit, but you probably add him to the casualty ward, I assume.
I didn't like seeing Oscar Allen leave tracks early with a bit of a knee niggle also going.
I did see that. I thought maybe a bit of Seinfeld bubble boy might be a chance to come out with Oscar Allen. Just put him in a giant bubble and roll him around the footy club.
Honestly, I don't know what'll happen if the Big O goes down.
He remains one of 6 players, maybe 5 players to kick a goal every game this season.
Really?
He lost his multiple status on the weekend, which he was the only player at that rate with Jeremy Cameron not kicking a goal the week before. But he's still kicked a goal every game this season, going very well.
Quality effort. It certainly wasn't a Sir Doug Nicholls round to remember for Jermaine Jones, but he did take part in donning the First Nations jumper on the weekend against the Hawks. It looked amazing. Designed, of course, by Eagles AFLW player Crystal Petrescu. How many long sleeve did we see out there, Scully? How many did you predict?
Well, I predicted 8+ for the game. So Hawthorn and West Coast. I thought it was really... Look, the game...
Jeff Newman, didn't he give you a buzz for the weather outlook?
Top 5 worst losses in the club's history. I was most disappointed in the amount of players wearing long sleeve jumpers. You're in Tasmania, right? You have them available.
Looked warm.
I don't care. You're not going to have a better opportunity to wear a long sleeve jumper. One player had one on.
I think it was Hunty.
Okay, good. I'm not surprised. He's a backman, sort of.
So
good.
they will get another chance. You'll get another chance to get a few more reprieves this weekend because they'll get a chance on Saturday night. Might be a bit chillier against the Bombers. It'll be a great time for fans to celebrate the amazing contributions and the unforgettable moments that our First Nation players have had along the journey. We have a host of activations all around the ground, starting from about 3:30, so get there early. They've got rooftop and halftime performances going on. We hope you can be there for the boys. They certainly need the fans' support more than ever right now, Scully, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, they do. Just on the First Nations jumper and Sir Doug Nicholls round, all of that made me think about some of the great Indigenous teammates I've had over my time, and I think that's a really important part to celebrate about our game, and these rounds do mean a lot to those boys. So, I always used to love playing, and there was like a milestone game for me. I just used to love playing alongside the Jettas and the Ryans and Riolis. And
You got Wirrapunda late too, didn't you?
Wirrapunda, he was a great teammate, a Victorian, of course. So we always used to talk about that, and
Great character.
Oh, mate, these guys can do things that us mortals cannot do. Like, I just love watching it. So I spoke to Liam Ryan on radio last night. First time I've ever seen Flying do media, ever.
Yeah.
He was great.
Was he?
He was great. You boys need to roll him out a bit more.
Excellent. Okay, that's on us then.
Okay.
What about Saturday night and the Bombers on the horizon? What are you expecting? Are you fearful of another result in that realm, or do you expect a turnaround with basically the same cattle? Hearn, Yeo, Barris, all possibilities to return. I think Barris is certainty. The other two, see how they train. Oscar, see how he trains.
At this point, honestly, the result is irrelevant. After a performance like that, win or lose isn't the aim here. And I know fans might not like hearing that, but what's important to me and what I'm watching is fundamental skills. The good and bad sides are separated by how you can do things that are fundamental to the game. Ground balls, not fumbling the footy, not coughing the ball up when you get tackled, tackling and not getting tackles broken, hitting handballs when you're not under pressure. Those things for me are important. The pressure, the contested work, the competitiveness, all of that you need to bring. But can you execute fundamental skills of the game that all of these players have been able to do at a junior level? Like, that's why they're on an AFL list. So that's what I'll be watching for.
All right, Simo said he's going to throw the magnets around the board in the next few weeks. Looking at the team, there's not too many more levers that they can pull, to be honest, looking at the cattle and what they're doing. What would you like to see out there? How often did Petch play on a wing when you were playing with him?
Little to no.
So I want to see, even though he's been having stints around the ball, I'd like to see him sort of around the ball, but maybe even as the sweeper at wing situations, and try and have the dash from half back or behind stoppage now.
You could put him
because
back.
Jermaine Jones isn't going to be there anymore.
You could put him back if you want to see some dash from. You could put him on a back flank and see how he goes.
Give him Jermaine Jones's role.
Yeah, I think so. Like, sometimes with players, like Jack hasn't played a lot in the back line. If you give them a role and say, hey, don't get beaten by your man, his natural side will always shine through. Like, if he gets near the ball, he'll use his pace. Whereas as a forward, we go get the ball and get dangerous and kick goals, and sometimes that doesn't happen as a forward. But you get put behind the footy, you see the game, and he'll always be able to use his pace. It doesn't matter what he's doing. But if you give him the first role of defend first, like, maybe that could be a good change. We've seen Tom Barrass play as a forward before.
You want to see the big fella go the other way?
Well, not really, but you could.
Sure.
I'd like to see Callum Jamieson be given full-time ruck duties.
Sure.
I don't think he's a forward. I think he's a ruck. And so we'll only be able to see what he can do as a ruck if he gets the 80-20 rather than the 20-80. Mm-hmm. So that would mean Bailey Williams would go. I would like to see Bailey forward now. I thought he's done a really good job in the ruck over the first 10 weeks of the season. I'd like to see him have a go there. Who else have I got for you?
I'd like to see Luke Edwards have a run around the ball, like a proper CBD stick.
Yeah, remember that game out against Richmond?
Of course.
Yep. Look, he clearly can win. That's what I'm talking about, these young guys. They're on list because they can play footy. So let's try and get some guys into positions that they can really succeed and play at their best. That's what I want to see. And maybe you have to change some around. Josh Rotham, I've seen him play as a forward. You could put him forward. Try some stuff. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Look forward to seeing a better result on the weekend. Scully, thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Inside Swoop, courtesy of Jim Beam. Go well, Scully.
Thank you, mate.